Coming up on Twitch, the death of Media Center, Corsair's latest liquid coolers, and the new NUC reviewed, sick AMD Game Bundles, laptop GPU upgrades, and finally, Ryan reviews the AKracing Gaming Chair. All that and more coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 315, recorded May 14th, 2015. Liquid coolers, laptop GPUs, and WMC is dead.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for the right payments API, check out the Braintree V.0 SDK. With one simple integration, you get every way to pay. To learn more and to try out the sandbox, go to braintreepayments.com/Twitch.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, Twitch's weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful, most accessible, most delightful, most engaging, and yes, most enthralling information about computer hardware. We love the tablets, we love the phones, but today we're going to start off with a saga of loss, death, and what could have been. Joining me right now, Mr. Ryan Shrout of PCPer.com, the man, the myth, the legend.
Hello, hello. Do you sit and think about terms to use at the beginning of the show before it happens, or is that all on the fly? You have a script written out before each episode, I guess is what I'm asking.
Welcome to This Week in Computer Hardware. Today's show is going to be full of mirth and... No, man, it just kind of happens. I'm not really sure how or why.
Nice.
I could, if you'd like me to start plotting it out. Meticulous crafting.
No. Now that I know it's all random and stuff, I would prefer that. Yeah, actually.
It makes much more sense.
Yeah.
So, big story that came out last week. Scott wrote this up for PCPer.com. We were talking about it last week. I feel like I've talked about this in several places. I guess I was talking about it with I got to be guest on the Tested podcast. Was that Microsoft has acknowledged, I think Ed Bott probably broke this story, that the Media Center's dead. Thank you. It's been a slice. We're not supporting Windows Media Center in Windows 10, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
And there was much lamenting on Twitter, and then Robert Heron pointed out, like, well, okay, so it's still supported in Windows 8, so I'll probably only get another 7 years out of it. One of the things that was kind of funny, as Scott notes at the top of the story up on PCPer, basically Gabe from Microsoft Windows Insiders program has confirmed on Twitter that Windows 10 will drop support for Windows Media Center due to decline in usage. And it's really funny because my understanding is the usage is calculated based on the people who opt into giving Microsoft their stats. So the super users who build Windows Media Center machines are probably many of the same people who don't want to share their usage stat with Windows. Because according to the stats they have, the primary use for Windows Media Center is viewing DVDs, which is amusing to me because everybody I know who's running Windows Media Center is doing it with either a Ceton cable card tuner or one of the Silicon Dust cable card tuners, or have, for example, Robert Heron, from HeronFidelity.com. He's done an amazing Windows Media Center system where he's ripped his entire Blu-ray collection to a server, and then it comes up with this giant screen full of pictures, box covers, album art, Blu-ray art for all of those titles. So, and it was kind of obviously intentionally you could either argue that Microsoft was trying to kill it off because in Windows 8 you had to pay $10 and have the Pro version of Windows Media 8 or Windows 8. So obviously this wasn't something that Microsoft was like, we're going to broaden this to everyone. I think they just sort of contained it down to a smaller user base. And the rumor is that a lot of the features that make Windows Media Center so wonderful for power users will eventually be migrated to the Xbox One, which means instead of a premium operating system that nobody wants to buy with an extra $10 premium for Windows Media Center, you can just buy an Xbox One, which is currently selling for what? How many millions of dollars?
An Xbox One, $399?
$399, so $400.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's no, I take it back. Xbox One plus Halo, I can pick that up for $350 if I shop around.
Okay, there you go.
So
it's not bad.
Dropping every day. Almost as inexpensive as upgrading to Pro and spending $10 or leaving your life on Windows 7.
I think this seemed inevitable, kind of the dropping of MCE, but sure. I think the number of people who are going to go, oh, MCE doesn't exist, I guess I'll go buy an Xbox, is going to be pretty small in the grand scheme, right? Yeah. I don't know. I think Scott's story over here that he brought up, there was some interesting kind of backstory to it. Like its ties to games for Windows Live, for example. I didn't really know about until I read the editorial that he put together there in terms of some of the requirements for a game to have that designation is that it had to work with Media Center Edition. It had to support Xbox accessories. It had to allow, what was the feature? It was called Trey and Play, which means the game had to be able to launch without having to be installed all the way first, right? Which is a technology way ahead of its time in terms of that's something Xbox One and PlayStation 4 are still trying to figure out how to do today. Maybe that was the issue, is they were still trying to figure out how to do it in Windows back then. But the idea was cool, and it could have been another killer feature for Media Center Edition, you know, basically making it a PC console, but, you know, they're putting their weight behind Xbox and the brand and the division there, which seems to be why they care very little for Media Center users.
They may care a lot for Media Center users, but I think the business model is pretty difficult to justify at this point. There are no hobbies at Microsoft. That might be the way of putting it. And of course, you know, if you're a major, it doesn't matter really whether if you're Apple or Google or Microsoft, a lot of the people you are partnering with to make your video stores viable, to make your platform more viable, I should add Amazon to that list, don't particularly want to support end users getting to snatch content and do what they will with it. So it is what it is, man.
Yep.
Corsair Hydro Series H100i GTX and H80i GT liquid CPU cooler reviews, because Corsair needed more SKUs. I kid slightly. Sebastian Peak writing this up for PCPro.com. These, I gotta say, you know, now that I've mocked the fact that Corsair has more coolers, because we need more coolers, I really like the look of these.
Yeah. And that's really the majority of what they changed. There's a little bit in terms of, like, if you look at the tubing right there, it's thicker, it's more rigid. It's supposed to prevent kind of dissipation, evaporation of the liquid to a higher degree. But this look and styling of it is really kind of the most dramatic changes. Mounting mechanism's a little bit different, but it's still fairly easy to use. But like if you scroll down a little bit more, there's photos that show, instead of just kind of the black radiator, you've got this silver stripe along the side of it with the Corsair branding on there, which for, you know, a device that will likely be seen if you have a window on your case or you know, something like that, or if this is mounted outside of the case, which some people can still do. It definitely just looks neater than it did before. Nothing dramatic, I guess I would say. And performance-wise, we appear to be hitting some kind of physical limits on what physics allows us to do with liquid and temperatures and water blocks. You know, if you turn the fans up, things get cooler. If you turn the fans down, noise levels are lower, but temperatures are higher, right? So not a particularly revolutionary thought process, I guess.
No, but I mean, even with the fans turned up, I mean, looking at that second chart, the next chart below that, that's the temperatures, and the next chart down, you're looking at the noise results. You know, load and idle are fundamentally the same, and you know, 13 dB is not exactly a huge amount of noise. You know, one of the things we discovered in one of our crazy water cooling builds a long time ago was that if you use the more water you use, the cooler you're going to keep things, and the less fan noise you're going to generate, keeping that gigantic volume of water cool, but
Sure.
you still come down to there's a finite amount of physical space on the top of the processor out of which you can pull heat. And once you've done that, you can't really cool it down that much more, at least not without getting really kind of crazy pants. You know, with either some sort of, you know, Peltier cooling, refrigerated cooling, frozen cooling, liquid nitrogen cooling. What's the pricing on these?
It's kind of in line with where we have seen other of Corsair self-contained units. If you look down, I think we're looking at like $120 for the H100i GTX and probably $80 for the H80i GTX. Let me look that up here real quick. Newegg is selling for $120 for the H100i, and then for the H80i, come on, search bar, $89. So I was pretty close.
Yeah.
Not too bad. I mean, they still seem expensive if you compare it to some of the lower end but not reference coolers that you can get for AMD or Intel processors. Of course, you can get a pretty competent CPU cooler, you know, a heatsink and fan combination for $50, and be pretty satisfied there. You're gonna pay a little bit more for this. You're gonna get a little bit better cooling and potentially lower noise levels if you run the fans at the lower end speeds.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like there used to be, I think liquid cooling used to be more compelling, but certainly if you overclock or do some of the crazier stuff, or like constantly run your system in some sort of full zoot gaming mode, I think that's when the liquid coolers become compelling again. Intel NUC5i7RYH SFF System Review, Broadwell and Iris graphics in a NUC, the next unit of computing.
We talked about these a lot, haven't we?
It's kind of funny because we're Darren from Hack5 just built a couple of servers out of NUC boxes.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
we actually the original NUC box we were using as our file server for a long time. You know, it was interfacing with the Thunderbolt storage array, and it acts as our file server. Perfectly competent for that, but a little bit of overkill in terms of what its compute workload was, of course. But you know, I mean, what you're looking at here is essentially a Broadwell-based small form factor DIY bare bones system. It is. We talked about one a month ago or so. This one has a Core i7 processor instead of a Core i5, and it has Iris graphics as opposed to just traditional Intel HD graphics. Model number Iris 6100 here, and the interesting, I guess, the most interesting thing I found is that both of those specification bumps actually resulted in more performance differences than I expected. So the Core i7 5557U, which is still a dual-core hyper-threaded part, has a base clock of 3.1 and a turbo clock of 3.4 inside this little machine here. If you compare that to the Core i5 variant that we reviewed previously, you're getting like a 35% CPU performance increase in like multi-threaded applications. So, you know, anything rendering or CPU benchmark-wise as well. You're going to get a noticeable performance increase there. And then on the GPU side, you're still talking about a 35 to 40% performance improvements in like mainstream gaming titles. So if you play Counter-Strike or League of Legends or World of Warcraft or, you know, Diablo 3, things like that, they'll be very playable on this, and you're going to get a 30 to 40% average frame rate bump over the Core i5 on it. Because you know, you're getting more compute units on the graphics and higher clock speeds, and then you're getting higher clock speeds on the CPU. The unit I'm holding here obviously has a custom lid that was built for us by a reader 3D printed out. So your NUC, if you buy one of these, won't ship with this lid, unfortunately. If there's a huge demand for it, we'll make some and sell them, of course. But because of its added height, I think. So its added height allows for a 2.5-inch hard drive to be installed. You can either use that as your only storage, or you can use that in addition to the M.2 slot in there. But I also think it partly has something to do with giving the system a little bit more room to breathe, because the TDP of the processor in here is 28 watts compared to the Core i5 processor that has a 15-watt TDP. So you're almost doubling the TDP from CPU to CPU, but you are getting, like I said, anywhere from 35 to 45% performance improvement on CPU and GPU side of things. So it's more than I expected it to be, just again because both processors were dual core and hyper threaded. I didn't think I would see that much of a boost, but they increased clock speeds dramatically enough to make it interesting. Also, this with this unit, they shipped an SSD that it was an M.2 form factor, PCI Express NVMe, which is one of the first, maybe the first M.2 SSD to support NVMe. And they were basically just doing that to demonstrate that, hey, these platforms, even though they're small, they use the latest technology. You know, here is the most bleeding edge storage protocol that you can use, NVMe, and we support it on this. I mean, we're getting 2.2 gigabytes per second read speeds off of that drive. Can you utilize that much performance on a system like this? I think that's pretty difficult, right? That's like high-end video editing storage requirements, right? You know, 4K 60 high bitrate stuff. You're not going to do that on this system. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the compute power you have available here. But
Maybe
it is a good demonstration. Well, that's yes.
Just because
I would hope
you're being no, I'm teasing, right? Because you can't use it. There's just not enough there.
You could do 4K video editing on this. You wouldn't want to. The storage would help you with that, but it wouldn't help you that much.
What we need is more memory and a bigger processor.
Yeah. I mean, video editing can use all the cores you can get. This has 2 cores. Yeah. We'll talk about later a Xeon processor that launched with, I think, 18 cores this week. So there's
18 cores.
Your swing in compute capability from Intel in the span of a week. So yeah.
From 2 cores to 18 cores.
Yeah.
And they're all current parts, pretty much using the latest technology. Speaking of the latest in technology, ladies and gentlemen, Ryan did a video perspective. He's been threatening to do this for several weeks. The AKracing, if you want to get really granular, the AK6014 Ergonomic Gaming Chair, which is essentially your classic kind of Sparko racing style seat, except that you can recline it, bolted to a sturdy office chair base. Let me I assume it looks like it's something better than the $40 chairs from Office Depot, which it should be for $350. Did you like it?
Yeah. I have to admit that I did. Yes. You know, I will be the first to admit that it can look goofy, right? Sitting in a chair that looks like a racing car seat at a desk, doing video editing, you know, things like that. But I have like I don't know. I've gone to Sam's Club, Costco, bought office chairs there, and they're, you know, whatever. The height adjustment kind of breaks on them eventually. I went to IKEA and I bought like a $120 chair there, and it's comfortable. It's fine. This one just seems to kind of put pressure on your sides and on your butt and on your thighs and stuff to get you to sit up straight. It has a full height back, so it's like an executive style chair in that way. It can recline, so if you want to take a nap or you just want to, you have different levels. Maybe you want it to sit up straighter than most other office chairs. You can actually do that, or you can recline it more if you want to.
So the things you're describing that hold you in place are called bolsters. They're basically what keep your upper body and your butt from sliding to the left or right side of the race car during maneuvering. It's a full height to give you some neck support, although that's kind of been supplanted by the neck braces that are mandatory in almost all racing now. So it felt sturdy.
No, it felt sturdy. I mean, Alan, who has more experience with this stuff than me, looked at it and said, this looks like you could actually bolt this to a car if you wanted it to, right? Obviously, I don't think I would recommend it. But hey, in a pinch, you do what you got to do. Instead, this just has a set of wheels on the bottom. It's expensive, but it's not as expensive as other chairs that we've seen. I can't tell you much. We've had it for about 3 weeks, and it's held up very well over, our usage of it every day. But what do I know what it's going to be like in a year? I don't yet. Right. It's got adjustable armrest heights, which is nice for, I like to sit very high up at the desk, but I still want to push my chair under the table, under the desk, so the armrest can go down. That's, just some adjustability benefits there as well. There are several OEMs or several vendors that sell this particular product, or very similar products, I guess I should say. This one got shipped to us from guys over at 4gaminggear.com. They're the U.S. distributor of that product. But you can buy them on Amazon and Newegg and stuff too. So they're definitely out there. I won't lie. I kind of want to buy a couple of more to keep at our office that way. So because now I'm using normal crappy chairs when I do my GPU testing and stuff. So I'm a little bit disappointed in it. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Like if you look up at Summit Racing, which is one of the classic places to buy parts for, pretty much anything these days. But if you're looking for performance improvement for your vehicle, whether it's suspension or engine, they started as kind of engines and hot rods and built out from there. But they actually sell kits to convert racing seats into office chairs. Like one of my favorite ones is, well, there's a company that's pretty big in the, not the wakeboard boat company, the ski boat company, but Mastercraft is also a racing seat company. Different Mastercraft, same name. Mastercraft without the inner cap. No, actually Mastercraft Safety is how but Mastercraft, there's somebody who was making kits for a long time to turn Mastercraft safety seats into racing, or excuse me, into rockers. And if only I'd known how much I would want one of those 5 years later, I would have bought one. I don't know if you can click the link that's right below the AKracing seat. There's a pretty good view at Project Cars. If you want to see some really amazing eye candy, go to techreport.com and look at In the Moment with Project Cars. If you want to see some pretty badass eye candy for racing, if you scroll down, there's a Porsche-like thing a little farther down. It's up on Steam and it's highly rated. It's utterly gorgeous. And if you are contemplating a return to racing games, by all means.
Yep. I just picked it up today or yesterday. It is a very system intense game as well. So it's a good way to show off your graphics card. I know there's some hubbub going around now about AMD's AMD Radeon performance on it is not as good as NVIDIA GeForce performance on it, but AMD says that they're working on a driver to fix that. But it looks amazing. I've been playing it off and on for the last 4 or 5 months or something like that. And what I have learned is I'm still not good at race car driving and simulation style games, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for $49. It's a little bit limited in terms of cars right now, but they're kind of promising to expand on that. But it looks really good. This and GTA 5 and The Witcher 3 coming out are definitely games that show the gaming benefits of a PC system over a console system. Just the resolution and quality you can get out of it are really, really nice.
Yeah, so much shiny. We should take a moment to thank our sponsor, Braintree. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Braintree. It's code for easy online payments. If you're building a mobile app and you're searching for a simple payment solution, you should check out Braintree. You could code it yourself because you're into suffering and pain and wasting a lot of time, or you can check out Braintree. Braintree V.0, the SDK makes it easy to offer multiple payment types, multiple mobile payment types. If you're building a mobile app and you're searching for a simple payment solution, it's pretty sick. PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo cards, credit cards, and more, all with a single integration. It's crazy. It's like 10 lines of code. It's simple. It's secure. Braintree says if you're a developer, you can integrate payments in a matter of minutes. If you don't have the time to deal with minutes, you can call Braintree and they'll handle the integration for you. They'll walk you through it. It supports Android, iOS, and JavaScript clients. They have SDKs in 7 languages: .NET, Node.js, Java, Perl, PHP, Python, and Ruby. Elegant code, they say, with clear documentation. I'm not fit to judge that, but I know a lot of you people listening are. and if you don't think so, you'll tell us. But think about it, people. This is integrating, let me say it again, PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, cards, and more with 10 lines of code. So let me give you a little motivation to check it out. Braintree will give you an easy way to accept multiple payment types with one integration, quick, knowledgeable developer support if you have any questions. Apple Pay, PayPal, Bitcoin, Venmo, cards, and whatever comes next, because they've got your back over at Braintree. You can do it all with a single integration with the Braintree V.0 SDK. One little snippet of code, 10 lines, people, and you'll be set up in less than 10 minutes. To learn more, and for your first 50,000 in transactions, fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/twitch. You'll be making your life easier, and you'll be supporting the show. So,
thank you very much for their support. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Fractal Design defined S mid-tower enclosure review. It's funny. We did so many small cases, and now it's suddenly we're back to the world of normal size cases.
Yes, it is. I would say normal size, not big case. This is not like a Corsair 800D or something like that. This is much more standard in terms of physical size, but what they've done a very good job of creating a case that I think has a very specific target and audience, right? So if you look at, it's really when you get into, you know, like the second page and stuff, when everything is taken apart, you start to see that there's a ton of empty space inside this case. And it is kind of, you can install any normal components there. You can use a standard heatsink and go about your business. But this is really designed for a ton of flexibility for people who use custom water cooling, right? You've got capability for single thickness radiators up top, multiple thickness radiators on the side and on the bottom. You can choose where you put your hard drives, either on the inside of the case or on the outside, like on the front or back, right? You know, they're all inside the case, but on the front or back of like the motherboard tray. Very easy kind of mounts for them that you thumb screw, take off, put the SSD or hard drive on it, put it back on, thumb screw the device back on. Keeps things nice and clean. You know, they've got places to mount reservoirs, like drill-free reservoir mounting on the front of the motherboard tray. You know, that's, you know, for people who like to add a little flair and style to stuff. It looks really good. Cooling support for, you know, up to 420 millimeter radiators up top. And then if you want double thickness 360 up front, you could do that. Now that comes at a cost. There are no 5 1/4 inch drive bays, which is becoming a more common trait. And I fully support it as somebody who doesn't use optical drives anymore. I know there are some people that do, but these don't support optical drives. So that's, you know, if that's important to you, then you're gonna have to move on and try a different device. You know, these types of cases, you know, we know about self-contained water coolers for processors. And we know that more and more GPUs are shipping with self-contained water coolers for them as well. So this will give you opportunities to, you know, mount both a self-contained water cooler for a CPU and a GPU on separate loops, right? You know, they're self-contained. You can't really modify them and still have plenty of places to put them, either up top or on the front of the system. You know, Sebastian, he shows here with the Corsair 100i, I think it was, or the 110, or the 100i that we just talked about, actually, the GTX one, I think, you know, mounted to the front of the case as opposed to the top. Right, so you get different configuration options there. And you can see that's a micro ATX motherboard in that shot. So it's not a full-size ATX, but you can still see there's plenty of room at the bottom for your power supply and additional componentry there. And then on the last page, you get a shot of that micro ATX with like a full-size graphics card in there, the water coolers mounted, the power supply mounted, plenty of space for additional stuff should you want to go that route. And I think maybe most impressively at this case is $120. No, I'm sorry. With the side window, it was $89.99. So this is the Define R3, right? Or Define S. Fractal Design Define S. $89.99 at Newegg and Amazon. And that's pretty impressive. Like, we're used to talking to, I feel like we talk more and more about $200 cases than we ever did before. And it's nice to see kind of an everyday price for a case that has a lot of interesting features and unique capabilities to it, as long as you don't need optical drives. I don't know if that would work for you, Patrick, but as long as you don't need an optical drive.
You know, I'm looking, well, okay, at 2 desktop systems to my left, one of which has an optical drive that it doesn't need, one of which has no optical drive. So I can consider it. I would like this case a little bit more if it didn't have a big window in the side. I know everybody's probably bored of me complaining about windows in cases. But I gotta say, it's a really clean, sophisticated design, especially that brushed front.
Yeah.
It's stylish, and I like stylish. It's subtle. So Newegg is jumping on Game Bundles. I thought this was kind of an interesting story. Josh wrote this up for PC Per. AMD has been pretty quiet on the bundle scene, but I think we may have had their future plans revealed to us a bit early. So Newegg apparently has a bunch of AMD R9 based cards with 1 to 2 free software titles. The R9 290 and the 290X both get GTA 5 and Dirt Rally. So that's about $100 worth of games with a $300 card. That's a pretty badass deal. The lower end cards only receive Dirt Rally, which is a $35 value. That's pretty cool. GTA 5, very, very new, as Josh points out. And Dirt Rally is an early access title that will have a bunch of free content added over the next 9 or 10 months. And just for fun, I'm going to click on the link to see if it's still there. Not an AMD bundle. Could be a Newegg specific bundle.
Yeah, it was an interesting day with that. Because nobody, like, we didn't get any heads up that this was going to happen. This happened, you know, maybe a week after NVIDIA launched a game bundle with its GPUs with The Witcher 3 and Batman Arkham Knight. I don't think it really matters to the end consumer because at the end of the day, if you buy these GPUs through Newegg, like I think it's R9 290 and 290X, you get GTA 5 and you get Dirt Rally with it. And that's all that really matters. But we were confused why this was only showing up on Newegg. It wasn't showing up on Amazon or NCIX or Tiger Direct or those other resellers that we're used to seeing these types of bundles through. And apparently AMD continues to push that this was not a bundle that they created, the GTA 5 portion of it, rather. That it was something Newegg worked with the partners, the GPU partners to get. So that's what it is. It seems so odd out there, right? They've made it's no mystery, right, at this point that there are going to be new AMD GPUs that are coming out relatively soon. So they're trying to incentivize people to buy the stock that's already out there. They don't want to be stuck with too much of it. And I think getting a game like GTA 5 that is clearly a flagship title and, you know, still selling for $50 or $60 is a pretty good benefit there. When you're talking about that, and Dirt Rally is about $90 worth of free games. So if you don't already have it and you're looking to upgrade, that's an option. But now you've got competing options. You got NVIDIA's bundle and you've got AMD's bundle. So
it's a good.
I don't know if that should waver your decision on which GPU you want to get, but you got another variable to throw in there.
Well, if you've been thinking about buying, if you need a new GPU and you're thinking about GTA 5, I think it probably would be worth considering. RAdeon R9 300 series release dates, benchlife.info via WCCF Tech believes that AMD's Radeon R9 300 series GPUs will launch in late June, writes Scott up on PC Per. Specifically, the R9 380, 370, and the R9 380, the R7 370, the R7 360 will arrive on the 18th of June. Listed as OEM parts, which apparently, Ryan, you've speculated could mean that the Fiji XT might go by a different name. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I don't really know at this point because they did OEM announce a 300 series of GPUs. I still think it might be 400 series of GPUs is what they announced for the Enthusiast brand, but I don't really know. It's interesting that they're talking about the R9 380, R7 370, and R7 360 will arrive on the 18th of June. If you go to AMD's website, you can look up OEM specifications for those exact part numbers. And the secret is that the R9 380 is essentially a Radeon R9 285 that exists today, right? Just kind of rebranded. Same core count, same memory interface, same amount of memory. So we're essentially looking at the exact same GPU. Same with the R7 370. I think that might have been an R9 270 before. But you're officially kind of looking at rebrands. The 390X apparently will be released a week later. And that would be the one that would be the new GPU, the Fiji GPU, that would have, you know, things like high bandwidth memory on it, a new architecture, and potentially a kind of new performance level to compete against NVIDIA's GeForce GTX Titan X or 980 series of graphics cards. So hopefully that turns out to be the case. We haven't really seen GPU launches at E3 in a long time. It's an interesting place for it because it's a show that tends to focus on consoles more than PCs. But this could be a little bit of a turnaround, at least in that direction.
Interesting. I don't know. I'll be curious to see if they show up when we expect and if the prices actually drop.
Yep, agreed.
1080p streaming from NVIDIA Grid is available with a long list of caveats. Jeremy wrote this up for PC Per. So 1080p streaming, you know, the NVIDIA's grid's been around for a while. 720p streaming has been around for a while, you know, and possibly unsafe. We used a Steam box to stream it. It's pretty amazing how efficient it is. So the 720p required a 10 megabit per second connection on a network with an NVIDIA Game Stream ready 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi router and, quote, less than 60 milliseconds or less ping time to a grid server. You found them playable once you mentally adjusted to the delay, which is, I don't know if I'd call that damning with faint praise or praising with a slight damnation, but grids apparently like 35 of the 50 games of the service will now stream at full 1080p and 60 frames per second, including Batman Arkham Origins, Devil May Cry 4, Dirt 3, but you're going to need one of the compatible routers and a 30 megabit per second download stream, with 50 megs being recommended by NVIDIA for the best results. Which in theory means my cable modem would work, assuming it is within the you know, requisite number of milliseconds of an NVIDIA server, which I assume it is, given my proximity to NVIDIA World Headquarters.
Yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you? Yeah.
You know, there's a new Shield Hub beta that's now available. Should you be one of the rare owners of a Shield Hub? You know, I now, as a result of reading that blog post, desperately want to play Ultra Street Fighter 4 because it looks just that good.
It does. It's a 50 megabit per second downstream internet connection recommendation for this. Yeah, seems high. Now I'm trying to think, like 1080p 60. I don't know how much kind of headroom they want you to have in order to get that stream. But clearly you don't need 50 megabits to get a 1080p 60 stream.
Well, it depends,
you know,
right?
If it's 20 megabit quality stream, then, you know, in theory 30 could do it, which is why they set the minimum there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're doing it, if they're listing it that way because they want to make sure you have overhead. But, you know, it's, if you know, you can stream 1080p in you know, 5 or 10 megabits. But occasionally when a lot of things happen on your screen, say an explosion, the entire thing turns into smushy blocks of pixels. So it goes all 8-bit on you. So they're trying to make sure they have enough headroom to prevent that kind of thing. And in most video games, everything's moving quite a bit. So it does not lend itself to compression in any kind of easy way.
If you remember back in March at GDC, I think that was where it was, NVIDIA announced the Shield console, although they just call it the Shield console device. And I think they said May or June for release of that. So it's more than likely that this grid announcement of upgrading the servers for 1080p 60 is preparing the ecosystem for that device, right? Because that's a device where, you know, you're not playing it on a 10-inch tablet or an 8-inch tablet or on a handheld gaming device. You're playing it on a 4K screen or a 1080p big screen, right? Where data rate and resolution are going to have more dramatic impact than they would on smaller screens, right? So having a 20 or 30 megabit actual video stream coming into your system playing on your 60-inch TV is more valuable than having that same bit rate come to your 10-inch tablet, right? So I think that's kind of all the beginnings of that release, hopefully, because that's we're still kind of waiting on that device. So
be interesting. I'll be curious. Man, now I really want Ultra Street Fighter 4 because, you know, video games are something I have a lot of time for this week. Intel announced the Xeon E7 V3 processors based on Haswell EX. I think you teased this earlier. Is this the 18-core CPU of doom?
It is. It is. If you have $7,100.
Say that again.
7,100 American dollars.
That's a lot of money for a CPU.
It's a lot of dollars. You can get an 18-core. It's a Xeon E7 8890 V3 processor, which is 18 cores, 45 megabytes of L3 cache, 165 watt TDP, and a clock speed of 2.5 gigahertz. Right. So that's 18 cores and one processor and one socket. And obviously you can get these in 2 and 4 socket designs. So you can see how that core count will go up. And that's hyper-threaded as well. So it's 18 cores, 36 threads per processor for the low price of $7,174.
And, you know, for the
Trade
people who
press.
are snickering at home, there actually are use cases for this in servers and video production or 3D rendering, or architects that are dealing with ginormous, ridiculous ongoing calculations in the process of manipulating a building model or something.
Well, you think of like web host VMs, stuff like that, right? Where you want to give each application access to 2 cores, right? You want to limit it. Now you can get 9 applications or 9 virtual servers on that one processor core. You get access to that kind of stuff there. You scale that out that way. I found it interesting. So there's an 18-core 2.5 gigahertz. There's an 18-core 2.3 and a 2.1 gigahertz model, all with slightly decreasing prices.
Right.
The lowest end of the Xeon E7 V3 series is an 8-core processor. So you can't go below 8-core. 8-core, 2 gigahertz, 115 watt TDP, 20 megs of cache. Then you go up to 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18 cores per socket. So there's that. Now, keep in mind, like I think you can get maybe not. Let me think about this for a second. I don't know what socket those 18-core parts are in, but I don't think they will fit in your traditional. Like right now, if you can buy a Xeon processor, certain segments of a Xeon processor, and then put them in your X99 motherboard, if the motherboard has the correct support in the BIOS for Xeon processors, which I think like most Asus boards do, for example. The idea of putting an 18-core in a single socket system that maybe you have, that you do video editing on or encoding on or something like that sounds compelling, minus that $7,100 price tag, I guess. $7,100 price tag really is never compelling, I guess. So I don't know.
It's not. It's also really funny when because there's some comments down below where some anonymous poster is like, oh, you've got to look at Intel's Power 8s, which are dropping in price, and because the Power 9s are coming, and don't forget AMD's going to have a server SKU in the future. So it's very spammy, right? Which is kind of funny. But it's also, there are actual end user workstation, productivity applications for Xeon, but I'm pretty sure nobody's actually going to be using a Power 8 to render video in their house. I mean, a Power 8's a fascinating part, right? Because it can run like 96 threads simultaneously. But it's always pretty funny because PC Per is presenting itself as a place to spec out your next large server configuration. Spammers must be stopped. They must be.
In general, yes, I would agree with that sentiment.
Like, I don't want to take anything away from PC Per. Y'all do amazing work. But yeah, no, I generally don't go to enthusiast, consumer websites for my large-scale server.
It's a different audience for sure. There's some spillover, but it's more of an interest of, hey, look at all this cool hardware tech, 18 cores.
Someday it's going to trickle down into a product you can actually afford.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Speaking of parts you can actually afford, a friend of mine one of my friends on the nerds list sent this out. He's been using one of Monoprice's 4K monitors. If you haven't seen it, there's a pretty good write-up up on tomshardware.com. And to put this into context, it's listed at $499 on Monoprice. It's currently for sale for $443.33. It's a 60 hertz 4K flat panel, which is a pretty fantastic deal. 3840 by 2160, 16 by 9 aspect ratio, 5 video inputs, including, quote, 2 HDMI MHL ports, dual link DVI-D, and 2 DisplayPort connections. You're going to need the DisplayPort input. You're going to need to use the DisplayPort input to get 60 hertz. It got a pretty favorable review from Tom's Hardware. And it's funny. It was, I think it's like currently listed or originally listed for maybe $750 on Amazon. Yeah, I think it was like originally 800. Now it's, now it's down to like 500 on sale for 460. That's a pretty good deal. I was pretty stoked about that. I'd like to see a slightly larger panel. for 4K, but 28 28's a pretty good start. I think 28's better, you know.
I'm actually getting in a 40-inch 4K monitor from Seiki, and I'm very curious to see what that experience is like. Because I mean, 40 inches is big for a monitor. So what that feels like sitting on a desk, right? 40 inches is traditionally a TV size, not really a monitor size, but when you're talking about a 4K resolution, now you're getting pixels that are going to be a little bit bigger. Maybe you can read it without any kind of scaling on, and see how that compares to, you know, like a pair of 25 by 14 monitors, for example, or even a 28-inch 4K monitor. So I agree. 28 is probably a little bit too small for that, but that's where everybody's at with 4K monitors. 28, maybe you can get a 32 as well.
32 is not bad. Yeah, no, I've what was the size? I had a Dell UltraSharp for an extended loan. I won the curved monitor from Dell, and we saw similar monitors from a couple other manufacturers, which are pretty cool. The 34-inch curved monitors, desktop monitors, are really compelling. Do you love those moments when you just can't find the one part you're looking for? Yeah, so that would be the Dell UltraSharp 32. So that'd be 4 inches. It doesn't sound like much, but I think it's a pretty big deal when you're looking at a desktop monitor. Yeah, I think 28 is ideal for QHD resolutions, 2560 by 1440. But man, you know, if you want to get all of the information on one screen, that's a pretty amazing price for a 4K monitor. Just wanted to share that with people.
That's a good find.
Oh my goodness, we should probably wrap it. This has been about an hour.
Yeah, we're getting close there. I do want to point out that I don't know, we're having, I don't know if emails aren't being forwarded in the correct way to us, or we're having kind of a dropout in email, both including spam and regular email, which, by the way, I don't know how often you look in that account, Patrick, but man, spam is awful in that one. It is probably the worst I've ever seen. And Google incorrectly marks every spam message as important as well, which I find
irony
interesting as well. Twitch at twit.tv, that's TWiCH at twit.tv is really the place to go to there. Send us email, send us your questions, feedback or thoughts. I think we did we address, there was one email kind of down in the notes. I don't know if we had already addressed it. It was about the MXM modules before. Yeah,
we can read that one real quick. Nick says, I have an Alienware M18X R1 laptop I've been using for quite some time. About a year ago, one of the GTX 580M cards failed in it. It ran fine as long as SLI was not enabled, but a few days ago, the other 580M failed. Ouch. And now it's running just in the Intel 3000 HD in the CPU. I'm not afraid to get in there and do some parts replacements, since I've already done a lot of parts replacements in these M18X laptops before. My question is, are these MXM slots only able to take GPUs from the same generation of machine, or could I try to hunt down a GTX 970M or something to put in there instead? Or should I just bail out of the laptop altogether? Thanks, says Nick, and love the show. Thanks, Nick. That's a really interesting question. So I didn't realize, are MXM modules still even being made?
Yeah, they are, but they're not being touted. Like when they were first, MXM 2.0 first came out, it was kind of like, hey, this is the pathway for upgradability. And honestly, both NVIDIA and AMD wanted that to be the case. Who didn't want that to be the case were the OEMs, who kind of depend on the laptop refresh, repurchase cycle.
To make a lot of money.
Yeah. And so they weren't real apt to do that, and neither NVIDIA or AMD kind of either wanted to go against that or be the ones responsible for making and marketing the MXM modules themselves. Now, that being said, if you can get a hold of them, most of the time they are, you can install, you can swap them. The complication comes in the cooling setup, right? Ooh. The cooling, in some cases, like I have used a couple of Alienware laptops, where the cooling is kind of like a general purpose, very generic, big flat heatsink that goes on, that covers the whole module itself. Other ones I have seen are kind of cut out in a way where if another MXM module that has a GPU in a slightly different spot, or memory in a slightly different spot, doesn't match up and it won't actually cool it all correctly. Right. And the other option is your MXM module is rated at 20 watts and the new one you buy is rated at 50 watts or something like that. And the cooler that was built into your laptop, for that GPU is targeted at the 20 watt rating. And you can't change the cooling in it. You can't upgrade that. That's not something that is an option. So it's really a hit or miss thing. In theory, he should be able to take a GTX 970 MXM module and put it in there. The problem will be finding that. You might be able to find something like that on eBay or something
I'll talk about finding that in a second.
Okay. Finding it can be difficult, first of all, because it's not something that Alienware just sells, or any vendor that I know of really just sells. Right. If you had a machine from like one of the small boutique guys, that you might have better luck there emailing somebody, telling them what happened and saying, hey, I want to try this. Can you help me out? And they'd be willing to do that. I don't think a company the size of Dell and Alienware is really going to be interested in it. So if you could get a hold of one that had a return policy so that if it didn't work, you could take it back, I might say go for it. But, buying something from somebody with no return policy, not knowing if it's going to work, it seems like a pretty risky venture.
Well, it's funny because Nick's mentions like putting in a 970 in there, and it's the pricing. It's kind of funny if you dig around Amazon, you can find a bunch of them are pretty obviously either pullouts or new old stock. 4000M Quadros, GTX 460Ms. Right. It's like, oh, there's a VGA card, awesome. And then
don't buy that.
Well, it's please don't. It was like I was telling somebody like, oh, will Windows 10 run on my CE devices? No, no, it will not. But then you can look at like NVIDIA GeForce GTX 980Ms, DDR5, 8 gigabytes. They're pretty badass. But there we go. GTX 970M is $632 in an upgrade kit. So it's got the MXM module, the brace, the little bits of, conductive rubber or whatever they are, heat conductive rubber, thermal rubber to go in there. And you're looking at like $632 for an N70M, $900 for a 980M. If you want to replace both GPUs inside that ATX, brace for impact, GTX 980 SLI upgrade kit, so it's 2 modules. That's $1,908. Which will certainly give you a little bit of oomph on your graphics, but if it will work in the thermal capacity, and then digging around on eBay, here's a ATI Mobility Radeon HD 5870 in an MXM package for $345. There's a pretty awesome upgrade, which is specifically being marketed on eBay for the M17X and M18X. It's a GTX 780M, 4 gigabytes of DDR5, $790. So I'm thinking if you want to game on that laptop, you're probably financially better off getting a new laptop.
Yeah, that sucks to say, but you're taking a chance with everything else, and you're talking about a $600 or $700 chance.
Right. Yeah. Oh, here we go. There's one last search on eBay turned up Alienware M17X R4, M18X R2, VGA graphics video card, GTX 660M with 2 gigabytes of DDR5 for $177. With
that'll be a
30-day
lower performing
returns.
GPU than he's used to.
Yeah,
because he had 2 580s.
And
but it'll be better than the Intel graphics, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, 2 available, 11 sold, 34 watching. They will be shipped to you from China. So,
of course.
Of course.
Of course.
Another 660M.
Yeah.
660M. Somebody's got a lot of 660Ms.
Somebody had a warehouse, is that what you're telling me?
Somebody had a warehouse sale. Perhaps a former manufacturer of Alienware laptops had a big old pile of these in the back. Let's see. Let me do one last check for 680M. Yeah, it's interesting. man, I hate it when it's just not compelling.
It's almost so close. Like
something.
MXM as a technology and as an ecosystem was almost cool enough to work, but even Intel tried to push it, right? And they don't even make the discrete GPUs, but they were trying to get these partners on board with this kind of DIY capability for laptops, and it just never took off.
Well, the good news is you can buy a 680M card in the MXM form factor. The bad news is it's going to start at $530. Nick?
Yep.
Good information. Probably not the news you were looking for. PCPer.com is the place to find Mr. Ryan Shrout. You can find me at techthing.com, TEKTHING. If you got a question, and like Ryan mentioned, we're having some issues with email, or maybe you stop sending us email questions, which breaks my heart a little bit. That's Twitch, TWiCH at twit.tv. Perhaps we'll do an all questions show next week, or you can tweet at Ryan Shrout or at Patrick Norton. Let's fire up some questions, and we'll go nuts for you next week on the questions. With that, I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.